see is a campaigning for U.S. Senator. Justin, are you coming through?
Hi, good morning, Steve. Yes, I got you 5x5, loud and clear.
Awesome. We can hear you good too. So perfect. Thank you for joining us this morning. Are you, you're from West River. So are you currently West River right now?
I'm in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Okay. Well, thanks for, you're a little early.
Just starting to come up. Beautiful. Oh no, I get up early in the morning.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. On that note, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself then over there?
Well, first of all, good morning, Steve, and good morning, South Dakota. Justin McNeal, and I am running for the United States here in South Dakota. I'm a business owner here in South Dakota. I started a company called Dakota, and I am focused on two problems. One is addressing wood accumulation in the Black Hills National Forest. It's a huge fire hazard, and is making a product that addresses healthy soils across South Dakota farmland. So I'm a product out of that waste stream, and those are the two problems focused on solving. And then in addition to that, I'm running for the Senate because at the end of the day, I'm just concerned. Our ever increasing national debt. It doesn't seem like anybody talking about it or addressing it or coming up with a plan on how to address that. And so I'm out of private life because I'm very serious about the problem and getting to work on it.
So you've got a little bit of experience with the government, if you will. You're a Navy veteran and a nuclear engineer, and some submarine. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, sure. So I in the United States Navy right out of boot camp. I was a little bit of a rebel ranger, so I figured the military would straighten me out. And so I enlisted in the United States Navy in August of 2001. And then obviously we all remember about 3 weeks later, 9/11 happened. In school, you take a test in the beginning, and there's all these different jobs you can do in the United States, and I had no idea what all the Navy had to offer. Anyway, so I took this test, and they go, you should be this nuclear engineer. And they go, oh, well, the Navy powers its submarine fleet, and it's with nuclear power. And I said, okay, 17, 18-year-old, that sounds interesting. So sure, let's do it. So I went to the Naval Nuclear Power School in South Carolina, and then I was got assigned to a fast attack submarine called the USS Key West out of Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Served on that for 4 years, did 3 Western Pacific deployments, 2 Eastern Pacific deployments, and then got out in 2007 and loved Hawaii, stay in Hawaii. So I stayed in Hawaii, used my GI Bill for a master's in business, built a business in finance, and then came back here to South Dakota.
So you do talk, you're pretty vocal, if you will, about national debt, which is now north of $38 trillion.
Yeah, that's a tricky number. Don't quote us on it, but it's teetering it's right around 39 trillion.
Yeah. So most politicians, when they talk about it, you talk about the chopping block and starting to unrigging our fiscal future. What do you think? Can we do anything about that?
Well, we can't really talk about the debt until we talk about the two biggest line items for the federal budget, which is Social Security and healthcare. In my time in finance, when I would sit down with, the hundreds of families that I sat down with and came up with a financial plan for, what I would always say is, you can have it two ways. We can have it hard now and easy later, or we can have it easy now and hard later. So you make the choice. And I think most Americans are willing to understand and put in the hard work now so we can have it a little bit easier later. But we just need a realistic plan and something that the country can get behind. And, in regards to Social Security, we just have to have an honest conversation about that. To qualify for Social Security, you only have to work for 40 quarters, which is 10 years. When the Social Security program came out in the 30s, benefits were supposed to start at age 65. Well, the average life expectancy in the 30s was age 67. So it was a benefit that was going to be paying out for 2 years. There's just we just have to have an honest conversation about that. Nobody wants to take anybody's Social Security away, but we have to address that formula. Because if we don't, then by the end of this next Senate term, Social Security is due to run out of funding by 2032. So 75%, only 75% of the people that are eligible for benefits, there's only money to pay 75% of that. So the way that the law is written, if it's not totally funded, then they can't pick and choose who the 75% of the people are that are going to get the money. So we're just compounding that problem. We're going to have an honest conversation about that. And let's get started on that. And like I said, nobody's really been talking about that. And I want to develop the plan and sell that to the American people. And then in the second big factor to that is healthcare. We have, that's the biggest increasing part of the federal budget every single year. It's going up by double digits every single year. We have to address Medicare and Medicaid. Nobody's talking about decreasing benefits, but we have to have a conversation on how that healthcare is administered. And so we have a plan for that. Sorry, I know we only got 20 minutes here this morning, so we're hitting some pretty big ticket items, but people can follow me on my website. They can reach out to me. I'm happy to have that conversation in depth on what that realistic plan looks like.
So let's talk a little bit about the Unholy Trinity. You often talk about the Unholy Trinity: special interests, lobbyists, career politicians. How do you plan to represent South Dakota?
Sure. So I coined that phrase, Unholy Trinity. I just fundamentally disagree with a special interest that will go and lobby a politician to enact a certain law or to put in some kind of entitlement or benefit for said special interest. And then the politician getting a legal form of bribery or a kickback in the form of a political campaign contribution. I don't think that benefits we the people. I get it. I'm a business owner. If 95% of my money revenue was coming from a government contract, I'm going to make sure that I know the politician that's in there, and I'm going to make sure that guy stays in there forever. So, politicians are focused on how do they stay in power for 40 plus years or 50 years or however long, for life. And I think they start losing touch with the American people, with the people of South Dakota. And so I'm trying to do something about that. I get the same phone calls from special interests saying, all right, Justin, we'd be happy to give you X amount of dollars. And it's not a small amount of money, but, we need you to say this or do this or sign this pledge in regards to this. And it's just like, okay, well, respectfully, you guys can keep your money. We'll do a grassroots campaign. Because it doesn't benefit we the people or the people of South Dakota at the end of the day. I don't really think, in my time in finance, when I was building my business, we used to spend a large amount of money on advertisement to get our name out there. What politicians use that huge war chest that they have is to blanket the media, send you a bunch of mailers, run a huge staff that's just going to go out there, not them in person, and just try to pump narrative and message to you. We can run a lean and mean ground campaign and really address the needs of the people of South Dakota and not have to sell our soul in the interim to receive that money to give us this false sense that we're going to be able to stay in power because we got $5 million in the bank and we have the ability to raise more if we need to. So I'm just combating that. I never wanted to be a spectator on the sideline complaining about the results. So, I'm still young and I'm ready to get into the fight, so to speak, get into the fray and try to make a difference.
Well, That's a perfect segue. Let's talk a little bit about the difference. Senator Mike Rounds has been a figure in our state for a long time as governor, now a 2-term senator. In your view, what has the establishment approach failed South Dakotans, and what is the single biggest policy difference between you and maybe Senator Rounds?
Okay. Well, I've never been a guy that, like when I was in the military, I never sat there and complained about the guy that was staying on the watch before me. I was happy that the guy stood the watch. I appreciated his service that he provided, but there's obviously things that I just want to do differently. In regards to, we kind of spoke a little bit about term limits there. If anybody, it's in the South Dakota State Constitution. It's Article 3, Subchapter 32 of our state constitution, has federal term limits for federally elected politicians. So it's clearly states that no federally elected politician should serve more than 12 years. So that's 2 terms in the Senate, and that's 6 years in the House of Representatives. And we're past that point. That was a ballot measure that was initiated in the 90s. The people in South Dakota overwhelmingly during the general election said, yeah, we think term limits are a good deal, good idea. So that was enacted in the 90s. There was a movement to overturn that via ballot measure in the early 2000s. And that was rejected once again by the people of South Dakota. They said, no, we think term limits are a good deal. And they had that in there. And that wasn't until a Supreme Court decision in the late 2000s that said, well, there's no federal law that's on the books. So state law doesn't supersede federal law. And that's how, our federally elected politicians, even though it's the will of the people of South Dakota for term limits, that they continue to do that. So that's one big policy difference there. I don't think people that are octogenarians, I think that there's a new group, a new generation of Americans that are ready to take over and start solving these problems for our generation and planning for for America going forward. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest differences.
So you did talk about the term limits, and so why do you believe seniority in Washington has become a liability for South Dakota rather than an asset?
Well, I mean, think about it. Everything is so divisive now. And so if you've been in politics for 40 years or 50 years and your opposition side has been there for that long, what's really making you want to work with that guy that's across the aisle? I just disagree. In my time during the military, we weren't defending America for one side or the other. You were defending it for all of Americans. What happened to the civil discourse or just the ability to have a conversation with your neighbor and being able to respectfully disagree, but then understand that, hey, well, there's still a system or a government that we need to live under or live by that needs to provide services for us. And the fact that we've just continued to shut the government down based on those fundamental disagreements, or because we just don't want the other side to win or to get more power, I mean, that's benefiting nobody. And, that comes from leadership, that comes from the ability to have empathy and compassion for our neighbor and our fellow American. I just believe that we can do better. If we get some new blood in there that's willing to work together and wanting to make a difference, wanting to do the right thing, wanting to move the country forward, then I think that we can get there.
So talk a little about that grassroots fight. Senator Rounds has a significant fundraising lead, and he's got the backing of the party establishment, if you will. How does a grassroots campaign like yours overcome some of that big money advantage and you reach voters before the primary?
So, what I tell everybody, the biggest thing you can do to help me out is you don't have to send me money. One is just to go vote June 2nd. And 2 is to tell 10 people that you heard me on the radio. You met me in person. You like what I had to say. You didn't like what I had to say. But I'm going to be a hard guy to keep up with. I'm going to show up in more places than he is. And I think that personal interaction with people and then that storytelling of everybody that I meet, if they go out there and tell 10 people, At the end of the day, we only need 100,000 votes to win this primary. There's a clear path to that victory. It's not like we need to get millions of votes. If we meet 10,000 people and they go tell 10 people, we are well there. So it's not an unsurmountable hill, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and I think the time is right here in the state. I think people are getting to a point where they feel or they think that there's just a change that needs to happen. I'm laser focused on solving that problem and then finding the next person in line and getting them to fight the next battles going forward. I'm not looking at doing this and staying there forever.
All right. Well, I always do like to leave the final word, if you will, with you. So is there anything that we didn't touch on or anything that you'd like to leave with the folks before we wrap up?
No, I'm just really happy for the opportunity, Steve. Thank you so much. And, everybody in South Dakota that's listening, please go vote on June 2nd. If you have any questions or you want to know a little bit more about me, my website is www.justinmcneal.com. All the social media accounts are Justin McNeal _US Senate. And I will leave you with a Gandhi quote, which is, be the change you wish to see in the world. So we can all do something. Let's all take a little bit of ownership in our country, in our government, and go out there and affect positive change.
All right. Well, we'll make sure that we put to your social media and links and everything to this when we upload it as well. So thank you for your time and appreciate your public service so far, and wish you luck and keep us in the loop on anything else, and appreciate it.
Hey, you have a great day, Steve. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. All right. Well, that'll do it for Northeast Radio SD.